So if you're just joining us today, or maybe you've been gone for a little bit, just bring you up to speed real quickly what we're doing. I asked the Discovery Young Adults, by the way, if someone wants to invest in me a new clicker, you'd be my new best friend. This is pathetic. I asked the young adults last couple months ago, what do you want me to talk about? We did this last summer, and it got a lot of really good feedback. So people have submitted ideas of things that they want to hear about, and that's what we're doing through the end of the year, is topics that you have submitted, and the month of June just happens to be on dating. So we are finishing up the dating series, and today we're going to be talking about conversations before marriage. With that said, Jason, it's a big day for you and Liz today. 4 o'clock this afternoon, getting married. So y'all have a little bit more time to have these conversations before 4 o'clock. You did tell me last night, anyone who would like to attend the wedding at 4 is more than welcome to come. Be in the auditorium. That'd be great if y'all could be there and support Jason and Liz. But we're going to talk today about things you need to talk about, specific conversations before you go to the altar. The last 2 weeks, if you want to go back on YouTube, Craig is filming these for us. Thank you, Craig. We talked 2 weeks ago about the type of person I should date, hypothetical, the type of values I'm looking for. Last week, we talked about the type of person I should dump, the relationship I should get out of. Today, we're going to talk about conversations you should have before you get married. And this is assuming you found the person you should be dating. And then next Sunday, we're going to end the dating series by talking about some real warning signs, red flags. Maybe you thought they were the right person and you're learning some things before the marriage. Get out while you see these things. Get out while you can. But today, conversations before marriage. Someone will inevitably ask the question, well, should we really focus that much on the future? And if you're in first service, it kind of contradicts my sermon this morning a little bit about focusing on seizing today. But should we focus on the future? Without a doubt, yes. Now, some people will quote James 4 for evidence as to why you don't need to worry about the future so much. You remember these words from the brother of Jesus. Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. You don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. What's your life? You're a mist. You appear for a little while, then you vanish. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or do that. Someone might look at James 4 and say, well, if that's the way we're supposed to live, not really worrying about tomorrow, why do I need to worry so much about having these conversations before marriage? These things will work themselves out. Very rarely do they work themselves out, and if you look at what James says here in James 4 a little bit closer, James does not condemn planning. In fact, he's a big fan of it in other parts of the book. He does not condemn planning, and he's not against saying you're going to go to a city and do business. What he's against is just assuming that everything you're going to do or claiming that you're going to do is going to go as planned. That's why he says what you should be saying is, if it is the Lord's will, this will happen. But you still need to be thinking about next steps. And in this context, it's your job or making money. So, here are just a few more passages. If someone ever says, don't worry so much about planning, and this gets into money matters as well, but here's some biblical precedents for planning. You go all the way back to Genesis 3:15. This is a prophecy that someone's going to come. It doesn't reference the name Jesus, but it's obviously talking about Jesus. God tells Adam and Eve, I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head and you will strike his heel. That's a plan. That was God's plan, that Satan was going to be defeated by Jesus. That is what we call a plan. God's not against planning. Jesus would ask this question in Luke 14. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. You're not going to first sit down and estimate the cost. Don't start the project and then find out you don't have enough money to finish the project. Can I do this before I start? What's that called? It's called a plan. Biblical precedent for planning. And then this term is not in Scripture, but we talk about it all the time. The plan of salvation. The plan of salvation. Planning is very biblical. So, just a good rule of thumb, you hear this in many different areas of life. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That's true on academics, that's true on growing in your career, it's true on marriage. It's true on relationships. You have to have some conversations before you get married. I thought this was real interesting. Now, you can find all kinds of statistics out there, but this statistic comes from Forbes magazine, which obviously is looking at things from a financial perspective. But most divorces in America occur between years 3 and 7, with only 4% of divorces in America after year 10. So if you make it a decade, it's not guaranteed, but the percentage of divorce drops significantly. But most people in America, if they're going to get divorced, happens years 3 to 7. Many reasons for that, not too hard to discern why. You've got the honeymoon stage, all the things. But I think that's an interesting statistic, and some of the things today we're going to talk about, I think, illustrate that a little bit more. So, I'm going to offer 3 categories of conversations we should have before marriage. You've touched on some of them. We're going to go a little bit deeper. Categories, obviously, large umbrella. A lot of things fall under each of these categories or umbrellas. But number 1, first and foremost, we got to have a conversation about faith. If you're here this morning, more than likely faith is important to you. If you meet someone here, more than likely faith is important to them. So you're already one step up on the ladder. Good for you. But we got to have more conversation than do we both believe in Jesus. Because a lot of people in the world believe in Jesus, and then they have different ideas of what it means to believe in Jesus and different interpretations of who Jesus was. So it's great we can agree on Jesus, but beyond Jesus, what is our faith going to look like? So here are a few things to consider. What does it mean to be a disciple for you, really? I mean, we have the definition by Jesus in Luke 9, whoever wants to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, follow me daily. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for you? People are going to answer that question differently. And I'm not saying you can't both be right. But I want to marry someone who defines discipleship the way that I define discipleship. Because if I don't, I may not be as strong in the faith as I could be or should be. If their definition of discipleship is not what I think the Bible teaches. So that's a big one. What does it mean to be a disciple? How is faith going to influence our home and our family? Julian alluded to that. Are we going to be what I call kingdom people? Kingdom people look at the world differently than regular people. Kingdom people, it's the Matthew 6:34, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these other things will be added to you as well. Kingdom people say the most important thing for us is what would God have us do in this situation for Him and for His people. Those are kingdom people. Kingdom people are not always interested or worried about how quickly can I get a vacation home. Now, is it wrong to have a vacation home? No, I'm not saying that, but that's not their main goal. Kingdom people are not sitting down saying, we for sure are going to retire at 64 so we can travel the world. That sounds kind of selfish. Hope it happens for you. I would love for it to happen for me. But that's not our focus as kingdom people. So how is faith going to influence our home? Next group, family, and you've alluded to this already. That same Forbes article said 43% of the divorces that took place in 2023 were over family issues. That's husband and wife, that's parents and children, that's extended family, relatives, friends, how you spend your time. So this idea of we're going to get married and we're going to live happily ever after, that's the goal. But there's some work that it takes to get to that point, and family can often be a big challenge. Curious listening to you, anything come to your mind on family?
How involved do you want your parents to be?
Very good. How involved do you want your parents to be? I'm asking you. Have you thought about that?
I have, and I want them distant.
You want them distance, okay.
I have a 1,000-mile minimum safe distance rule because they're in Arizona. So as long as they don't come much closer, we're good.
I'll be sure and tell them you said that if they ever come.
Well, my dad agrees with me.
Okay. That's a lot. Okay. So there's 1%, and I'm not saying you're wrong at all. You have your reasons. Who's someone that says they kind of like their family to be a little bit closer than, okay? And why do you say that?
I have a pretty good chance of being like the cool side of the family. So, I mean, childcare is expensive.
So just so you can get the benefits of it, not the
I
relation.
love my parents too.
Somebody else who said, I want to stay close by. I saw a couple more hands. Yeah? Mom's cooking. Okay. Okay. All right, one more who said, I'd kind of like some distance. Anyone else feel that way? You got to have an opinion. There's not just four of you with an opinion, right? It's okay. I want distance.
I'll buy it. I mean, we've been married 30 years. We've never lived closer than 500 miles from either parent, and it's been the best thing in the world. You're close enough for a one-day drive, you can get there when you need to, but they're far enough away where you just don't have to.
Kristen, do you agree with that? Okay. All right. Okay, so Suzanne and I are in the other camp. Suzanne and I want to stay close to family. We've had opportunities within the last few years to move away from family. And we've decided, one, we're both only children, and our parents are they in here? Aging. And so we feel like a need to help them when that time comes. But also not just that, we want to be near family. We're on the same page with that. And I don't think we're more right than Matt and Kristen, and I don't think Matt and Kristen, it's just what works for you.
You don't have my mother.
What works for you and your family dynamics.
I've had a lot, she had her father-in-law.
Okay. All right. Y'all have touched on these a little bit. Where do we want to live? This one has relaxed a little bit because of COVID in that a lot of people can now work remotely, even if their job is in another state. But before the days of remote working, this is a big deal. What if one person wants to live in the city? One person wants to live on the coast. One person wants to live in another country. One person wants to stay closer to home. Do you need to end the relationship because you don't agree on those things? No. But if you can't come to a consensus where the person who has to sacrifice is okay with sacrificing, this is going to be a constant problem. A constant problem. You don't think it would be, but it will. How involved do we want to be with our parents, in-laws, siblings, extended family? We'll talk a little bit more about that next week. But again, hey, I'm tired of your mom coming over to the house, or your sister's always on the phone with you, or whatever it may be. Are you going to be okay if I have a close relationship with my mom and sister? You don't want me to talk to them anymore? You don't want them to come around on the holidays? Well, that's going to create some tension. Are we going to alternate years of holidays? And then parents start getting their feelings hurt. It can be stressful, right? So talk about these issues before they start. Do we want to have children, and when? I would say most couples say they want to have children. Not every couple can. But when do we want to have kids? Sometimes that's out of your control, even when you think you have planned. But sometimes it just happens. But if you are planning, like, we need to be on the same page. One person says, I want to wait 9 years. One person says, I want to wait 18 months. There's a big difference between those two things. Have those conversations and know kind of where you're going when you enter the relationship. All right, last one, finances. In 2023, 24% of divorces were over financial matters. Jesus has a lot to say about money, and obviously, not only from this article, but other statistics prove money can be one of the leading factors of divorce before you even realize it. So we do have to talk about it before we get married. Y'all have touched on some of these, but career expectations and goals. You've read the reports. I'm sure you took a career assessment test when you were in college. Not every field pays the same. You're not going to make the same money being a teacher as you are a medical doctor. But you may really love teaching. The person that you marry, are they okay with you having a teacher's salary instead of a medical doctor's salary, or lawyer's salary, or accountant's salary, whatever it may be? What's our expectations? If someone says, kind of what you were saying, well, no, I I want to stay home with the kids, and I want us to travel all the time, and I want us to have a 3,000 square foot house with 5 bedrooms so the kids can have a pool and play. That's going to be really hard to do on 2 teacher salaries. It just is. That's just how the numbers work out. That's okay if it's not that big of a deal to you. If it's something you have to have, you need to talk about these things.
You want to sing it?
I'm not even going to acknowledge that. Okay. Our view of giving. I'm a Dave Ramsey guy, okay? Dave Ramsey says the reason you get wealthy is so you can do what, Julian? What's one of the reasons you want wealth?
Live like no one else is.
That's the slogan, yes. But why does he want you to reach financial freedom? To give, right?
Baby step 7.
It is baby step 7. But his idea is you don't accumulate all this wealth so you can just use it for you. You want to give back. So as a couple, what is our expectation for how we're going to give? What percentage of our income are we going to give? Is it all going to go to the church? Is it going to go to other places? What you don't want is to show up at church on Sunday morning and, we don't pass the plates like we used to anymore, but to find out you felt like we were going to give $100 a week and then your partner or your spouse just gave $300 a week and you get home and we didn't agree to this amount. And then there's so much conflict over something that should be a blessing. Giving. What is your view of giving? This comes as no surprise. Not everyone has the same view of giving. Find someone that shares those thoughts like you do. Julian alluded to this, and I'm alluding to it as well because big believer in getting out of debt, your view of debt. Everyone says they're against debt. Everyone does. No one raises their hand and says, I want more. I want more debt. Do they really mean that? Do they really mean that? There is this biblical teaching from Jesus of self-sacrifice. And sacrifice is more than just emotional and spiritual things. I think it also works into financial things. I really, really want that. Could I afford it? Technically, maybe, but it's going to be really tight. And I think the Lord would rather than spending all my money on this one thing, house, car, whatever it is, spend less money on me so I can do more for His kingdom. Have those conversations. Because again, if you aren't on the same page on that, you've got some difficult challenges ahead. Expected standard of living. This one is a little bit harder to talk about because you just don't know. You don't know what real estate's going to be doing. I never would have thought that houses in Dallas-Fort Worth would be what they are now. When I bought my first house, it wasn't Dallas-Fort Worth, but I bought my first house in 2011 for less than $200,000. That same house today would be $600,000 or $700,000. I never thought that was going to happen. But, are we going to be people who save and live within our means? Or are we going to be people who push it to the limits every month? Again, everyone says, well, yeah, we're going to live within our means. Proof's in the pudding. When it comes time to buy things you may or may not want, are you going to abide by that? And people kind of give indicators along the way. Just watch them while you're dating. How they view money and how they use money. Budget plan, that's nothing rocket science, kind of works with all these things. But sit down, make a budget together, a budget plan is meant to change. Okay, there's those 3 categories again: faith, family, finances. I'm going to leave it open for questions, comments. That y'all have had a lot of good ones today. Anything else come to your mind or questions? Greg, you got something you set up ready?
Yeah, I do have a question. So let's say you're with someone and they check all these boxes over here. Curious.
You love to ask really good questions. Okay. Let's start with the first one. You mentioned alcohol. I would say if there is a clear path to an addiction to alcohol, you need to very seriously consider that with the other person. I'll just tell you all a little bit about myself. I've never drank alcohol, but my main reason for not drinking alcohol is I know my personality. And my personality is more of an addiction personality, that I know if I did enjoy the taste of alcohol, I couldn't stop drinking. And so that's why I've chosen, for the most part, not to drink. I have some biblical convictions along those lines as well that I recognize not everyone shares. Those are my personal convictions, but my main reason for not drinking is the addiction personality. So with alcohol, I would keep that in check. If this person, I am going to drink alcohol no matter what, no matter reason, why? Why is it that important to you? And that's going to tell you a lot about their personality. So I wouldn't just, I can't give you a black and white answer on that one. Am I telling you enough on that one? Okay. Politics, it's election year. If you hadn't heard, it's an election year. I go back to this, kind of what I did when I taught about this last fall when someone wanted me to address politics. What do you mean by politics? Are we talking roads and bridges and tax rates, or are we talking about moral, ethical issues that acknowledge God as creator and the sanctity of life and marriage? I don't think those are political matters. I think those are spiritual matters that we haven't talked enough about in the church, and we've allowed the world to hijack those terms, and now they become political. So if you are considering a marriage with someone who does not value the sanctity of marriage, why would you marry them? If you are considering a marriage with someone that you want to begin a family with and they do not value the sanctity of life, why would you want that person to be the person you create life with? Am I answering your question? Call me sir. Thank you. So I would have those serious conversations. As far as do you vote Republican or Democrat, both parties are so messed up, who knows? Who knows? And that may look very different in 15 years than it does today.
What would you say about?
Well, if you're dating, I don't think you have much jurisdiction on how they spend their money. But I think you talk about it hypothetically as if we're about to begin a life together, and you've already had the conversation of these are our goals. How do you think that decision would impact those goals? But if you start telling someone you aren't married to how they can or can't spend their money, they're definitely not going to marry you.
Get a third party to mediate.
Yeah, I would think you would get premarital counseling before you couldn't come to a consensus.
Ideally, yes.
Yes, and I would encourage anyone who is considering marriage to have premarital counseling, because a third party is not invested in it the way you are emotionally, and they're going to tell you things that they see from a neutral perspective, but things which have just been proven about marriage. And some marriages, some potential marriages have been saved from a guaranteed divorce because they realized during premarital counseling, we don't need to go forward with this.
Any sort of disagreements on these things because people butt heads, everybody has different background stuff, is something like maybe premarital counseling, would that be beneficial in a sense where maybe you can't come to a consensus, okay, let's get a third party to mediate?
Yeah, I would think you would get premarital counseling before you couldn't come to a consensus.
Ideally, yes.
Yes, and I would encourage anyone who is considering marriage to have premarital counseling, because a third party is not invested in it the way you are emotionally, and they're going to tell you things that they see from a neutral perspective, but things which have just been proven about marriage. And some marriages, some potential marriages have been saved from a guaranteed divorce because they realized during premarital counseling, we don't need to go forward with this. All right, we are dismissed. Enjoy Luby's. If I don't get to see you, hope it changes your life.